friend? Is it a coworker? Is it a boss? Is it a child? Is it a parent? I know I've got like much of a spectrum of ages here. So one relationship, pick that in your head, and in this workshop, every time I'm like trying to bring things up, I want you to go to that relationship. So what's one story in that relationship that you're like, I need to let go of it. It's really not serving me. Or just right now, all I want you to do is, what do you tell yourself in that story? When it comes to that one relationship, what's the story that I tell myself? I'm going to try to kind of get the ball rolling. I'll share some big ones that come up. For example, in the workplace, oftentimes when it comes to colleagues, people will be like, they don't care about my voice. My voice doesn't matter. I'm not good enough. My parents don't understand me. I have to prove myself. What's a story that you have in that relationship, the one that you're thinking of? If anyone's comfortable sharing, I invite you to. And I get that we're being vulnerable, but inshallah, as you'll learn shortly, we build safety sometimes with taking risks. Build trust that way as well. And if there's another question that's pulling you, and you want to answer that, feel free to as well. So what are key markers from your family history when it came to trust? What are some key markers when it came to how trust was built, or were promises kept? Did parents always follow through?
So I think the one that pulled me was the first one, the key markers in my family history. One thing that my parents pushed us through and lived by themselves was that if you have said something, you must deliver. Like your word, even if you're not saying, I promise, or even if you're not saying, wallahi, just the fact that you said you're going to do something, you must fulfill that you are judged by what you are delivering when you said something. Yeah. So that was very sacred in our family then.
And so I'm imagining, so if everyone didn't hear her, she said she was raised in a family where when you said something like that, your word mattered. That was sacred. You were going to follow up. You were going to follow through with that. Can you now tell me, based on what she just said, how do you think she receives trust? How do you think that is going to affect her experience of trust in her life?
If somebody doesn't follow their word, then they're not trustworthy.
Yeah. She'll right away be like, well, that's her story would be, someone doesn't follow through, they're not trustworthy. In order to be trustworthy, it's people who hold to their word. Okay? So this is the starting point she gets awareness of. So again, ask yourself, how was I raised? What was one thing that my family did or conveyed that informs how we experience trust right now? Anyone else has something that they're realizing coming up for them that maybe to this point they didn't?
In my family, it was lack of communication. So if you're bothering me about something, or if I'm hurt by something, we don't talk about it, because confrontation is very, very ugly in my family.
Yeah.
It's just, not because it blows up, it's just we're too afraid to confront somebody that's older than us.
Yeah.
You know what, I'll just put this aside, I didn't talk about it, but even to this day, this conflict builds up and turns into something a lot more.
So trust for you is fill in the blank.
Passive aggression.
And that can break trust. Yes. So she was taught that if you trust and you're there for somebody, you don't address it. You don't talk about it. And again, so now imagine if Razia is in the workplace and her colleague comes up to her and says, hey Razia, can we have a talk about that incident that happened? Because I really didn't appreciate it. What do you think is happening for her in that moment? Right? So this is why we need to know our starting point. Because you might be here and you're ready to be like, oh, tell me how to build trust with someone else, but you don't even know what's going on in your inner world when those things are happening. You want to say something?
Yeah, like I remember in my family, always is like when you follow and listen to your parents, that's you're trustable or you're trustworthy for them.
Yeah.
It's like that. How
I can only trust you if you do what I'm saying.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a really big one. I'm so happy. And your name is?
Sabine.
Sabine, you brought it up. And Razia kind of too, touching on the same thing. Because one thing, and inshallah, if you want in your notes, you create a box of like things to unlearn. Trust, right? What do people often think? If you disagree with me, I can't trust you. Right? This is something that a lot of us, unfortunately, and I'm not going to say Islam because it's not an Islam issue, it's like the Muslim, the community, societal issue, that we don't know how to respectfully disagree. I can still love you because we have disagreements. We can still be safe with one another if we have disagreements. We haven't mastered that. So that's the one I was saying. Were you raised for autonomy and self-reliance? Were you allowed to have your own opinion? No. If you obey me, then you're a good person. That's someone I can trust. If you disagree, we can't. So imagine that starting point. So again, imagine that she's in a situation with her child, right? And her kid's like, well, Mom, I don't agree that that's a bad child. I'm not saying you do that. But, right, like a lot of us are raised that way.
Yeah, it's a mindset, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the mindset's a belief. And it's a belief that's dictating how you experience everything. And if that's how you experience, then again, it's hard to build trust if it only is this narrow definition that you have. So again, inshallah, what I invite you to is keep sitting with that question, right? Keep adding to it because there's so many layers. There's going to be things that come up for you, inshallah, as you sit with this, over time, over months. You're like, oh my God, you'll catch yourself now when you have interactions. You're like, I don't realize that I'm not trusting that person just because I just told myself this thing. And where did that come from? I'm following the tracks, inshallah. Let me see if there's any other points I wanted to make sure I cover here. So these questions obviously create a map of yourself. So again, we're talking about starting points, constantly imagining a map that you have, right? And one of the best gifts you can give yourself is having a more informed, detailed map of yourself. Alhamdulillah, the more detailed, and I always use the example like Google Maps. So I'm much older when Google Maps started off, so it was so basic. Now, like, it tells you the red light camera, please, that's like on the road. It tells you, like, every time I leave my house now, it tells me where every mosque is. Like, this is so cool, right? So it's more detailed. Inshallah, the true sign of wisdom is the more detailed awareness you have of yourself. The more that you're like, why do I do that? Why do I respond that way? Right? And now when you start making links and you reflect, you know what? I realize, like, yeah, my parents or, my siblings. For example, actually, I had this morning. I'll tell you this. So I do this for a living, right? And you think, oh, she knows something. No, I'm still learning. So this morning I was getting ready and I was reflecting on something. My oldest sister, she always said, you're so good at convincing. She can just persuade me to do anything. And she always says it, like, jokingly, but, sometimes I'm like, okay, like, is that a bad thing? And I just realized I'm the youngest. There's 6 siblings. I'm number 4. I'm like, yeah, I'm really good at convincing because I have 4 older siblings. I needed to convince and, like, be heard by all the time and make sure that, my opinion mattered. So, yeah, I am really good at convincing and making my arguments and, like, following it up. And I have a very high-pitched voice. This is my speaking voice right now. But, that was self-awareness. It's like, that makes sense. And I actually can't wait to call her and tell her, be like, wait, I know why I am and why you might not because you're the oldest sibling. And so you just kind of took it for granted. You had to follow what you said. So you didn't have to work on that muscle of convincing. Again, really crucial piece of information for me in my life. So inshallah, the more detailed map you have, the more you know your starting point, you are going to help yourself move away from triggers. One of the things I love, I got to recently spend a week with Dr. Gabor Mate, who's one of the leading experts in trauma, and he shared, he's like, his famous line that he's known for is, when it comes to trauma, we talk about the word trigger, and where does trigger come from? It comes from a weapon, right? A gun having a trigger. But he's like, in order for the trigger to set off, there has to be ammunition. What's the ammunition? This starting point, the detailed map that you're developing, inshallah, that's getting aware of the ammunition. You know what? That's why I get upset. This is what's going on for me. And alhamdulillah, again, as the believers, we want to constantly be polishing our heart. This is like such valuable stuff. All right, the detailed map. And the expectations one, again, I really hope you guys, inshallah, go back after this workshop, keep going over this, because you enter every relationship with expectations that are informed by your history. So again, in your situation, with his daughter, they each have expectations of one another, and they might not be conscious of what those expectations are. So the more that you get clear on what those are, especially in marriage that exists, work that exists, right? Student-teacher relationships, the more those expectations are clear, the less there's space for ambiguity, because again, that's kind of where conflict shows up a lot. It's like, I wasn't clear on what you wanted from me. I wasn't clear on what my role was in that. Okay, and then here's the last part that I'll share that I think is really important as well. Our stories, that final piece I said, our stories can risk being very rigid and narrow. The stories we tell ourselves, and reductionist. So it can actually become a truth. Again, I'm telling myself a story, but if I've been saying it for so long, this becomes the truth about myself. And sometimes it's not a truth that really matches the reality. And this is why it's so important to challenge our stories. This is why it's so important to have self-awareness and self-awareness that reflects the reality that is actually happening. Am I actually unworthy? Right? Is everyone actually not listening to me at work? Because I did make some points last week, and my manager did follow up on it. Right? So catching those stories is really important because the more you have a narrow understanding of yourself or of your role, it's going to rob you so much, and it's going to be hard to to let people in and trust. Okay? And
so my name is Samia, and I'm part of this
I left it open in case there were latecomers, but okay. So the stories that we tell about ourselves, we have to be careful because when we look at our own self-awareness, we don't want to fall into the trap of constricting that narrative and about ourselves and others, and this won't allow for self-awareness. For example, if I'm constantly telling myself that I'm not good enough at work, or if I tell myself, you know what, no one's ever supporting me at work, I'm going to look for something. Does everyone here know the word confirmation bias? Yeah? So confirmation bias is basically, I confirm everything I believe through that window. So if I'm constantly telling myself that I'm not good enough, or that my voice at work doesn't matter, then I'm going to confirm that with every time my colleague looks away, or every time my boss maybe looks over my point and asks someone else, I'm like, see, no one cares about me. So again, these stories, is it true? And then asking yourself, where did it come from? Where did that story come from? And how am I constantly confirming it? And this is so important, otherwise you hinder yourself from letting it kind of process. Assalamu alaikum. All right, so what are my stories? Here's kind of more detailed example for you to go through, and then take a screenshot. What is a story that I have told one too many times? Something that's just on repeat, like literally on autoplay throughout my mind. What is a story that I should let go of? Like if we're honest with ourselves, what do I need to unlearn? What is a part of myself that I need to break up with? And I love that picture because it's truth and trust. Right? In order for trust to happen, we've got to challenge the truth. So I want everyone to take a moment, and inshallah I want to invite you to the conversation. So share one story that's on repeat. And I get it's very vulnerable, but like I said, so I'll make it easy for you. I always tell people, new stories, because we're not even there yet. We're not talking about new stories yet. But usually, in what I do as a coach, and nonetheless, a Muslim coach, when I tell someone like, let's talk about what story I'm telling, or let's introduce a new one. And so for someone, for example, I like to start with identity. Right? I'm a Khalifa of Allah. That is my purpose. Being a Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an ambassador of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, calling to la ilaha illallah. And they're like, that feels so strange to me. And they'll say it, and they're like, this feels like really awkward. I'm like, well, because it's unfamiliar. But if I told you right now, say I'm an idiot. Yeah, I can do that. I say that like 10 times a day. Okay, right? So saying something new feels unfamiliar. Because this is a truth, a story I have not allowed into my narrative, into my mind. So what's the story that you tell yourself over and over again when it comes to, again, remember, hold that relationship in your mind, because that's going to help our conversation. So that relationship I asked you to pick for a workshop, what is that relationship for you? What's the story that you told yourself in that? So if someone's married, I'm imagining someone's like, my husband doesn't follow through on things. He doesn't care about what I have to say. He doesn't listen. I love that I'm seeing some smiles. For someone, it could be parents, right? My parents are not supportive. They always feel like they're not supportive. Your colleagues. So who's ready to share? What's the story?
Sorry, I just have a question. Are we talking about a story other people tell us all the time, or a story we tell
No,
ourselves?
that you tell yourself.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so my story is, am I doing the right thing with my kids? Am I doing right by my kids?
Is that a story? That's a question.
Question in the sense that question is arising because I don't feel that I am.
So that's the story.
Right.
I'm not doing well by my kids.
Right.
I'm not a good mom.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not competent enough.
Right.
Yeah.
How am I damaging them?
Yeah. And I want the unpolished version. I don't want the, am I a competent mother? No, I want the raw version. Like, I think I suck as a mom. Like, what's the internal dialogue? Because that's going to help everyone else. I love it. So thank you for being so open on it. Okay, so that's her story. Definitely won't want to break up with that.
I think almost the same, all moms have
All
that
moms,
story,
yeah.
because we want our kids to trust on us,
Yeah.
and we have to trust on them, but the relationship in between is not there. Like sometimes we feel that we
But
are
then
not
you
more
internalize
enough for
it.
them.
Yeah. But you're internalizing the difficulty of that relationship as I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah.
So that's
why it's not
problematic.
developing. That's trust is not
You need something to blame with someone, and again, you can hold yourself to account. I'm not saying, you completely write yourself off, but when you're doing it from a place of I'm just not good enough, I'm not confident mom, that doesn't help you move forward. So thank you, I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure that one is very loud for
So
mothers.
confirmation bias would be anytime they struggle,
I'm blaming it on
I
myself.
yeah, it's my fault.
Something goes wrong,
I didn't
yeah,
do it.
of course, I'm not a competent mom. Look at my kids not hugging grandma and grandpa and not saying salam. Well, it's because my son doesn't mom.
You didn't teach them.
Yeah, I didn't teach them, it's my fault.
So two internal stories. One that's pointed at me, one that's pointed at the other. So one that you know, I just don't get her, or you know, and then the other one would be she doesn't like me, or so.
She doesn't like me, and Magic probably feeds your other one, right? She doesn't like me because I don't get her.
Yeah, I don't know which one comes first.
Chicken or the egg, yeah. But these are two that you're constantly holding on to. And then that's your starting point for your relationship with her. It's like, well, she doesn't like me, she get her. And you know, as we'll progress, you'll realize obviously like your energy is informed by these stories. So I'm entering, if I came into this room today, my story was like, I have nothing to offer these people, like, oh my god, this is so intimidating, you'd feel in my energy. But here I am, and I'm like, I'm a student of knowledge with you, we're learning together, and even if I don't have the answers, like, hey, I'm excited to have this conversation. I know you guys are feeling that energy, right? Alhamdulillah. But if I'm feeling as, you know, you might be feeling like she doesn't like me and I don't, you know, I'm not sure I get her, she's going to be like tiptoeing around every conversation and trying to be maybe this cool dad, and she's just like, just try harder, and she'll inform or confirm even more what you already believe. Yeah. So, alhamdulillah, I'm really happy that you're gaining the awareness of what that story is. Let's hear from some young folks. I don't want to pick on you and I don't want to break trust, but what's a story that you're holding on to? I love the young people all of a sudden came up, were like, yes, please.
I think that like my parents are too narrow-minded that I can't talk to them about some things because of how they were raised.
Yeah, I love that. So if you didn't hear her, she said, you know, her story is my parents are really narrow-minded, and because they were raised differently, yeah, so I can't speak to them. Yeah, that's a really big one. Say the same thing. Yeah, and that's a big one. And obviously that's going to affect how much you want to share with them, how safe you feel with them. And then every time maybe when your parents are feeling frustrated or like, oh, you know, you need to listen to whatever they're saying, you're like, you see, there they are, being narrow-minded again, so just constant confirming for you. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give one more person, inshallah. Anyone else?
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
It's
go on,
another
go ahead.
question. This story that you are hearing in your mind, is it as a result of that relationship with that person, or could it be because you're comparing yourself to other people?
I love it. So that's a good one. So like, where did the story come from?
Yeah.
Is it because it's experiences I've had, or is it
I'll just
from
give you an example why I'm asking that. My story as of late has been that I'm not a good enough daughter. My parents never made me feel like that.
Yeah.
But I'm comparing myself to my peers and see what they do for their parents, and I feel like I'm not good enough daughter.
So it's good that you're tracing it, that it's come from comparison and your parents are making you feel that way. So what I would invite you to explore more then is, you know, what about that comparison has made me feel inadequate? But in terms of my relationship with people, does that shape my story? It can, but it's still my doing. And sometimes a person can make you feel a certain way. Like if there's someone at work and they make you feel they're good condescending, right? Like it's understandable why you might feel like an imposter, you might feel like you're not good at your job. There's a place for that, but you're still, I think that's the beauty of being a believer. We have agency over what we can tell ourselves and how that works. So maybe, you know what, my boss was rude, but I did miss that. Big difference in that. So for you, I'm imagining, okay, you've got this story, I'm not a great daughter, and that's making you feel, you know, maybe a bit insecure, and maybe affecting how your relationship is showing up with your parents. Or it might just be making you feel really bad about yourself and you're not really achieving the results that you would want. So in terms of understanding, you know, your parents would create that, what's the insecurities come about by comparing myself? How, and comparison has a healthy place, but how have I maybe taken it to another level where it's not helping me, right? And again, this is constantly like the tightrope that we follow. It's good, it can be healthy to compare to an extent. You know, we want to raise the bar for ourselves, but not internalizing in a way where we're beating ourselves up that I can't even get up and try to be a good daughter and the qualities I have. Or again, knowing your starting point, maybe the relationship with parents is very different than yours, and so hence they're able to do certain things. For example, my husband and I often reflect his parents are much, much older than him, and so it's really hard for him to have a connection because there's a generational gap. And so he feels really bad. They're like, hey, like you can't compare yourself to someone else. They have a very different dynamic. Their parents are younger. They understand the generation they grew in. So, you know, to answer your question, yes, it's not necessarily your parents created that. You already identified it. Like you answered yourself through comparison. Now it's just how can I create a new story that inshallah helps me. So I'm really, alhamdulillah, excited about what I see my friends doing with their parents, and it's really beautiful to see that. How could I channel some of that instead of saying, well, I must be a bad daughter because I don't do that. Right? Like stories are so powerful, they inform our beliefs and our inner world. So I would inshallah encourage you to shift it.
I would rebuttal that by saying she's an exceptional mother.
Sometimes someone doesn't need the rebuttal as much as they just need compassion of like, where is it coming from? And then helping her inform it. But yes, I'm glad that you're validating for her. All right, so now the question goes into how do we build trust? Right? How do we actually build trust? And like I said, understanding what does trust even mean? So first thing we have to establish is one size doesn't fit all. There's not one narrow version of trust I can give you, and it's the same for everyone here. Trust looks different, feels different, and everyone experiences it differently. And one of the questions that again people often ask is about trust, like how do I develop it? Just give me like the bulletproof, the nice bullet points like you see on TikTok and Instagram. Like here are the 3 ways to build trust. Done. How is it built? What do you need to feel trusting? How do I be a trusting person for someone? How do you know that you have felt trust? Right. So these are questions I'm inviting you to ask yourself as well. What do you need to feel like you can trust someone? Let's share. What do you need for yourself to feel like you can trust someone?
If they reciprocate the stories back to you. So if I'm telling you something about me, I want to hear something in return. If you're just listening, that's
Yeah.
dangerous.
So I'm sharing, but I expect you're going to share as well. That shows I can trust you. Awesome. Okay. Who else? Yes?
Someone lying too much, it's hard to trust them.
Okay. So you're giving the opposite, like I won't trust you if you're lying. And how will you know they're lying?
They would admit it eventually.
But I'm curious, right? Like, because I think that's a great point. So like you're like, well, lying breaks
Like,
trust.
how can you trust that person?
So initially there had to be trust for you to now not trust them because you're lying. So what made you initially trust that person? Okay, yeah. So that family history, we have some relationships. So naturally, for example, if I was a family friend of yours, even if you've never met me before, and I come to this room and they're like, oh yeah, my brother or my sister knows you. Good, great. There's some trust, familiarity. You definitely trust people that we're somewhat familiar with. Yes.
I think like communication and reassurance.
Yeah. So when they communicate with you and they give you reassurance, yeah, you feel like I can trust them.
Like conversating with them and they like tell you something that they did, for example, like an achievement, you're excited for them, but when you do something, they're like, they don't seem as excited, like they're not happy for you.
That's a big one. That would affect me, yeah. When you celebrate your wins and you're like excited for them and then you celebrate, oh, that's nice. Right? Yeah, for sure, the reaction. Yes?
If you confide in someone and they make fun of you right away, or later on, they use it against you.
That's a big trust breaker. So initially it's you confide in someone and so you trust them. So again, because we're going to get to that part, but why did you initially confide in them? What was it that made you feel
Let's say
trust
you're
them?
colleagues and you think you're working together on the same project.
So her expectations with her colleagues is, well, we're working together on the same project, so therefore I can trust you, and then I'm going to share certain information. So the reason I like put separate is we're going to get to that, but just kind of what we've talked about so far is really important for mapping it out. So her starting point is, and expectations of relationship, if we work together, you should be people I can trust. And if I can trust you, then I share information with you. So that's her narrative, and that's awesome. A lot of people have that, obviously, yeah.
Bringing up past mistakes.
Yeah. So that breaks trust. So we're not at breaking trust yet. And I love that we're jumping to it, but stay with it. Why do I feel I can trust you?
I think actions also reassure trust.
Yeah. So give me an example.
Going off for a group project thing, like showing up for someone.
Yes. Big one, showing up. Right? So if I'm going through something, you send me a message, you just give me a call, a gesture, whatever showing up looks like, but you show up. That builds trust. That's a big one for a lot of people.
Showing concern. If they're interested in knowing more about you and interested in knowing you and empathizing.
Yes, empathy. Yeah, empathy can create compassion, which obviously, inshallah, which gives you reassurance. I can trust you. Yeah.
Always being honest, even like, so they're not like feeding what you have to say. They're telling you like the reality of it.
Oh, yes. So like if you're saying something, they're like, well, I see why you see it that way, but kind of like her friend right now, right? She's like, I can, understand that's how you feel, but I want to tell you, like, I actually think they're an amazing daughter to your parents. Yeah. So being honest, instead of being like, yeah, you are the worst. Like, I can understand why you think that way. Or the opposite, where they are a bad kid, let's say, or a bad mom, and they're just like, no, it's okay that you're out 7 days a week and you don't see your kids. I'm like, girl, you do you, right? So yeah, we want honest friends. All right. That one, it's fun, like seeing a woman who wears hijab sometimes, like when my hair is showing, and then like someone doesn't tell me, I'm like, you're my friend, like just tell me, like if you have any hair, or if that's what my mama knows, like just do that. So yeah, so alhamdulillah, the beauty of what we just all covered is trust is built in very different ways for all of us, right? And it's not just that there's one way, alhamdulillah, there's ways that we can build, inshallah. Some other ones I want to share, and I have that. So what is trust? The fact that I can rely on you, that you're there for me, that they show up, that you have my back, that I can lean on you, that I can being held up by you. So that's kind of like supporting, encouraging one another. That you're supporting me. These are all ways. I'm sorry that I'm like in a way, but it's just the only place lunch I have. But these are factors, and this is not an exhaustive list, obviously, and it's very personal to everyone. But these are ways of building trust that shows me or makes me feel I can. And Dr. Catherine talked about context. I think that's important too in building trust. If I'm with colleagues, that shows I can trust you. If I'm with family members, ideally, inshallah, I pray that we feel trust. So certain environments can make us feel like, yeah, I'm in a place of trust. I'm in a place where I belong. So I'm going to do a quick little exercise, like really short, but it's really important building trust. And I did it recently at a dinner I was speaking at as well. So I want you to look at someone else in the room that you don't know. And I want you to just make eye contact. And I want you to smile.
Or how?
That's fine. You can look away. You don't have to like get lost in the stage. Just like acknowledging, smiling.
I don't want to make you do
Okay. So now I want to take it just one little step further. I want you to do it again, and this time I want you to look at the person and take turns, and you can each tell each other you belong here. Go ahead. Yeah? This simple act of first just making eye contact and smiling. And this is kind of like a side component at the end. We're going to talk about tone and gesture as well, the physical aspect of trust. But the reason I do this exercise is because unfortunately as believers, when we enter the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want you to catch yourself next time. You even smile and acknowledge the other person. How many of us just go to pray, maybe like quick glance on our tongue, we pray, we don't know who we're praying next to, we don't even acknowledge them. Right? And so I actually had a presentation that I did to imams across North America last year, and because I was like, I'm not going to waste this opportunity, I was like, can I just ask all of you? I'm like, there's like 100 of them on there. I'm like, do you ask your congregation to acknowledge and say salam to one another? And they're just like, what? They're like, oh, sister, one thing that said it. And there's these like prominent imams, and they're like, sister, we're not Christian. And I'm like, you know that the largest epidemic by 2030 by the World Health Organization is loneliness. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us more ajr for coming to the mosque to pray, it's not because our numbers matter, it's because the energy that's created by going to the mosque and you get that social connection and then you know that, oh, this is my sister who's praying, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? And then, so my husband, alhamdulillah, this past year, I'm so proud of him, he started going to the masjid for Isha and Fajr. Like, he does not miss it. And so we were away on a trip, and like again, he doesn't even know all of them personally. Like, yes, they say salam to one another. But this brother, like, hunted down his dad, got his number, and called. Was like, "You haven't been at the mosque. Are you okay?" I'm like, that's community. That's ummah, and that's what we need. So when we're talking about trust, you guys, what's beautiful about this? You each get to, inshallah, make that impact in your mosque. You get to be part of creating more safety in our mosque, more security, making someone feel when they come to mosque. So that's my goal for you. Inshallah, put a little homework thing, right? Like, make this part of your habit. So when you go to the grocery store and see another Muslim, I hope for everyone listening in Muslims, like I love talking to cashiers, right? Trust. Hello, how are you? How's your day going? Right? So many times, how are you is just a greeting, like a statement and a greeting. It's not, I actually don't care, right? Let's be real. So again, you just looking around the room, acknowledging one another, because I noted everyone came in and I'm kind of like shyly went to their spot and like let them not look at anyone else. It's awkward, right? We don't feel safety within ourselves. If I don't feel safe within myself, it's going to be really hard for me to acknowledge other people. So just this simple practice and doing this work, inshallah, it's going to allow you to own your space more, inshallah. All right, so from there, we're going to move on to what is trust for you? So talking about semantics, right? The definition. So trust is a concept that suffers with vagueness, the definitional vagueness. So we all know when we feel trust. You guys all clearly just communicated that to me. You said, what trust is for you, how it's built. So we can feel it, and we all know when we don't have trust. But it's really hard to pinpoint that. So is it a feeling? Is it a state? Is it an outcome? Is it a condition? What is trust? So let's all know. It can be all of those. So I want you to ask for yourself, is it a state, a feeling, is it a feeling, a state, an outcome, a condition? So that relationship that I'm asking you to hold on to again, I want you to ask yourself why in that relationship you don't feel trust. And if in that relationship you have felt trust, oh my God. Okay, so let's speed up a little bit. I still have like half my presentation. Okay, so for all of these, just pick one. What is in that relationship that does, feed trust? So I get that maybe it's a relationship that's more challenging, but what in that relationship has made you feel trusted? So I know you guys shared like your parents, for example, but what's one thing that they do or make you feel that does make you feel you can trust them? And when you're comfortable sharing, you can. But for everyone, so think of one thing. In that relationship, as much as, there's challenges, what's the one thing that does make you feel like you can trust? Yeah, she just let me go. So it's like, So quickly note that down, and I'll ask two people to share. Yes?
I was gonna say, like, when they're openly understanding and they don't cause a punishment if you think that you did something wrong, and they know and talk to you and like understand why you did it instead of saying like, oh, well, that's wrong, you shouldn't have done that.
Okay, so I love what you just said. It was so clear. She said, when my parents ask me why I did something, and they show that they're trying to be understanding instead of just punishing me and assuming why I did something. Please make sure you go home and tell your parents that today, because one of the beautiful ways, obviously, is positive reinforcement. Your parents, I bet you don't even realize that that's happening, that they're building trust. So let them know, like, Mom, I really trust you, and I feel safe with you when you do this. And let them know. So those moms that you are here and they're telling you they feel secure, your mom's probably in the same boat, and she needs to hear it from you. Yes?
When people, like, tell you they appreciate you, like, for example, you come home with, like, I don't know, like a good grade, and your parents say, I'm proud of you for putting in your best effort. Yeah. Not just like, oh, you got a 96, good job, get it again, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, try your best, and if you can succeed, do your best. Just like, I'm happy that you're trying.
Yeah, I love that. So trust is being built in that moment for you because you're feeling appreciated. There's honesty. They're like, hey, keep going, and I believe in you. Beautiful. So those are clear examples. So again, for yourself in that relationship that you pick, I want you to hold on to that. I'm going to try to whiz through some parts right now because this is the other big part here. So I love this quote, trust is a confident engagement with the unknown. Sometimes you don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know what that situation will look like, but you trust. And trust for, like I said, there are other things that can feed it. But there's this idea of trust. So it's kind of like the chicken and egg, as someone was saying earlier. This idea of, do I need to have trust in order to take a risk? Or do I take the risk and then trust is built? There's two camps. Not one is wrong, but I will give you encouragement for one of them. So again, I want you to ask yourself, which group am I in? Do I only trust when the person has proven themselves in something, or do I put myself out? Do I take a little bit of risk, and then I'll start? I know trust will be built in that situation. Who's in the first one? I only trust when the person's like really giving me a lot of reason to. Who does that? I'm in that camp, so I feel fine. And then the second one is I will take a little bit of risk, so kind of like Dr. Catherine was saying. So she will share with her colleagues because she's like, I trust you in the situation. She's taking a risk, and she's hoping that she's going to be able to trust them, and then she sees how it plays. So who's in the second group? Awesome, great. So what I encourage people, which is really important to know your starting point, if someone has experienced deep betrayal in their life, yeah, I'm not going to tell you to go take some big risks. That's why I say little, small moments of risk. It could be just asking for help. It could be just communicating with your mom what your need is, or that makes me feel really good when you do that. That's a small risk. but inshallah that will build more trust. And so the goal with, we understand trust can feel and look at many different things, but in order to start building it, there's got to be a little skin in the game. I've got to be able to take a little bit of risk. And again, maybe it's giving feedback to someone. Maybe it's voicing what I really value a relationship, but I've been really hurt by the way this happens. And so it's a difficult conversation, but trust is going to be built through that. And if the person can't receive it and they shut down, it's like take no responsibility, they're also showing you maybe this isn't the relationship I can feel trust and safety in. So you've got to take small risks. So with the dad and daughter here, there's going to be small risks that need to be done, right? And it's going to keep happening. And the goal is that the more those little steps happen, a little more trust, a little more safety starts to grow. And maybe something where we have to pull back. Here's the detriment that we have to be careful about. Sometimes people do is the whole TMI, too trusting, and I just lay it all out. Like if I were to come here to talk about all my life, very personal issues, like that's not trustworthy. That's just oversharing. And so we have to be mindful of that, because then you might be shooting yourself in the foot. Why are these people there for me? Like, I'm letting them know everything that's going on, and they should be checking up on me. But like, those aren't the people that are going to be there for you. Those people haven't really given you the indication that they can. So sometimes, we can fall into that, and sometimes, the core need there is connection. Someone who really seeks connection, and again, coming back from family history, if they didn't get that connection, they don't experience it in their life, they might be constantly sharing, and wanting to trust and over-trust people. And I'm sure we all know someone like that. It might be even us who, we give like money, just like, oh yeah, you know what, this person really need help, and so I just handed it over, and they need to stay at my house, so I just, whatever it is, right? And it can be too much. So just being mindful of that. We're not necessarily going to have time to go into, because I actually wanted you guys to like share an incident or from that category that you're in where that shows up for you. So I'll move on to breaking trust, right? So that one already came up really fast. But what does it mean to break trust? So trust is not just what I reveal to you, but it's also how you respond to it. So when we're talking about breaking trust, it's not just what I'm giving, kind of like Razia was saying, but it's also how you respond to what I'm revealing. Right? It's how you make me feel when I share something. I recently actually shared some really big news with a friend, and the way she responded definitely broke trust for me, because I was like, what? Like, instead of being happy for me, she kind of like wrote it off, and I was like, okay, so we're just going to pull back here. Right? So trust is how, when I give you information or I share something, how you're receiving it. And what kind of message am I getting it? It tells me, am I in safe territory or not? Yep.
How you're receiving means like how? Like
so how
share
you receive, for example, if you share with me that your daughter did really well in school, okay? You're like, oh, actually, my daughter, like, she got an award this week. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Did you see, like, that other event that's happening this week? Tell me how that makes you feel.
Like you changed the topic.
Like I didn't even acknowledge it really, right? I didn't share in this celebration with you, right? So that's not going to make you feel like you can trust me. Like, wow. Versus if I was like, that's incredible, Mashallah. You've been working so hard with her, and like, you should be so proud. How does that make you feel, right? And again, I think what's so important, because sometimes in the non-Muslim spaces when these conversations happen, I find, especially in the business world, it's very fake. I was actually just listening to a podcast where it was talking about, to be very, to influence and have, persuade people, you've just got to make sure that you're compliment people, this and that. And just my husband, I'm like, that sounds so like cheesy. Like as a believer, again, inshallah, you look for the good in people, and if that comes out sincerely, like convey it. But don't go into it like, oh, I want to have impact and influence, and so that's why I'm going to say this, right? So alhamdulillah, in the context of our being, these conversations are so important. And again, even in the workplace, around non-Muslims, it doesn't matter. Be sincere. Like, if you have a compliment, give it. Don't do it like, oh, I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to do that. It comes through. And again, the more that you feel secure and safe, it's easy to look for the good in other people. The more that you're insecure, it's hard to find good in others. So breaking trust. So you guys already kind of touched on some of these, but lying, obviously, you can read the list. These are non-exhaustive lists, but again, for us to get clarity on what does it look like when someone breaks trust. Now, the big part to really understand is if I'm reluctant to trust someone, and I'm really hesitant in taking even small risks, there's a fear there. And I'm letting the fear lead. And so what I would encourage you, if there is in your relationship that you're thinking of, if there is fear, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Because the more you get clarity on that, it helps. So do I have a fear of rejection? Do I have a fear that, for example, at work, again, like, will I be fired? will my daughter really hate me if I do this, right? What's the fear? So get clear on that. That will help you figure out why I'm afraid of trusting this person, why trust might be broken in that aspect. Is that clear for everyone? Is everyone able to think of one thing in their mind right now that has broken trust for them before with someone? Like, can you, if I ask, raise your hand if I ask you right now to share, how did someone break trust for you? Put your hand up if you could give me an example. You don't have to share, I'm just asking. If I asked you, would you have a clear example? Like, yep, this person did this and that broke my trust. Yeah? Okay. Can you think of an example of how you've broken someone's trust? I know that there's like not as many hands, and that's the whole point of this workshop. We want to look internally, but I'm glad I see some hands. So what's really important as well right now, just take a second, and this is worth the time that I'm going to use up for the limited one we have. Write down one thing that you have done that has broken trust with someone. Was it talking about them? Was it not being happy for them? Was it not sharing the way they shared? What was one thing that you did that maybe broke trust with someone? Okay. Are we doing the time?
109, 110.
Okay. Alhamdulillah, 20 minutes. I can do this. We can do this. So now, the big one that you guys are like, this is why we came here. Tell us how to build trust, Razia. We get it now. So alhamdulillah, how do you build trust? So there's actually, like I said, and I think this is the exciting part of it, that there's many ways and options and opportunities for us to constantly be building trust. The most easiest, like bulletproof way that I can give it to you is define first what trust means to you. So I told you that it can be a feeling, it can be a state, an outcome. What is trust for you? You define it. Okay? And again, what's really important is define it for yourself, and then that person that you've been holding in your mind this whole workshop, asking yourself, what could they do to make you feel that you can trust them? Right? So my sister, when she complains that I don't open up easily, even to her, she's like, what do I need to do? I'm like, ask me about whatever it is, right? Like, I'm not going to just open up. When you ask, hey, how is work going? I will share with you. When you don't ask, I'm not going to share because it doesn't make me feel like you care, and then I won't trust. Okay? So define what trust means for you. Ground yourself in the reality of the here and now. This is the story part. So instead of saying, well, I can't trust her because what? Like, friends just never follow through. Or my mom, she's just so narrow-minded. She's never going to care. Wait, what's present right now? You know what? I was late. I didn't message my mom that I was going to be coming home late. Of course she's upset. So what's actually happening right here, right now? Ground yourself in that. That helps build trust. Instead of, because again, what is trauma? Trauma is not us responding to what's happening right now. It's us responding to the past. All those triggers that come up. So that's really important. And then motivating yourself to take micro risks. Right? What's a small thing I could do? So again, I'll give you a simple example. That was a risk for me. So like I shared that friend, I shared some big news, and then she kind of like, didn't really share the celebration. So I took a little risk. I caught myself, okay, that wasn't really nice. But I'm like, you know what, I would really like to celebrate this. So, let's plan a dinner. She's like, yeah, let's do that. We gotta celebrate. And so I took a risk. And, alhamdulillah, it was really nicely received, and it made me feel like I could trust her. She was celebrating that with me. So that was a risk for me. Asking for help, right? That could be a small risk. So right now, I want you to write down what's one small risk you could take in that relationship that you've been holding to build safety. What's one thing? Is it I'm going to call that person, I'm going to send them a gift? Is it I'm going to follow up, I know they're going through something? And I'm going to give you some more practical components that build in trust. But first, just write one thing yourself. What's one small thing you could do to build trust? And I don't want to pick on the father-daughter duo, but I feel like they're inviting me to. What's one small risk you guys could take to make each other feel more safe? Is your daughter this one, or which one's your daughter?
Which one? I don't know.
Oh, mashallah, how many do you have?
Which one? Oh, I think this one volunteered, but it's her.
So what's one small thing? And you guys are teaching all of us. Remember that. We're here with you. We're learning. So what's one small thing you could do to build safety with one another. Build that trust.
Let them know how you're feeling about like an event or something that happened that made you feel like low, and then
I love that.
like, let them know how you're feeling.
So instead of him saying like, hey, like I can tell you're not feeling great, or I can tell you're kind of upset, instead of him doing that, you already sharing like something that happens where you're feeling low, like, hey, Dad, I didn't have a great day at school today. Okay, I love it. That's one thing you could do. If you need time, that's fine.
I'll think about it.
Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to use that opportunity. I'm going to trust you that you're going to come back to me, inshallah. All right, so what are some other practical ways that you can build trust? So building deeper trust through questions, right? A good question is an invitation to open up. And what is a good question? How do we use small talk? Again, like I said, subhanAllah, we say, how are you? And it's just a greeting and statement. It's not really wanting to know. So how do I ask good questions? That is such a key in building trust with people. So instead of just saying like, oh yeah, your mom hasn't been feeling well, how's she doing? Right? Okay, that can be a starting point. But be like, hey, like, how is it seeing your mom, go through such illness and like deteriorate? Like, how's that affecting you? Big difference, right? So asking better questions, inshallah, and asking questions that show deep care, compassion, or show that I see what's really going on for you. This can build deep trust and safety. Alhamdulillah. Yes.
I have a question. That you have different kids, like they have their different personalities, right? Yeah. For one, when you have question, they are giving you answer with the events like little bit, like how's your day, right?
I actually don't like that question, how's your day? I don't think that's a good question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm giving you an example, like anything. Like
okay, any question you ask, different
they're giving you some like events happening in the day and everything, that good or bad, right? When you are asking a question and they say good, and they laugh.
So one word answers.
One word answers.
Yes.
And they don't, by seeing them, you don't get that they are open to talk, right?
Yeah.
So
you don't feel like
how you build the trust for both of them?
Yeah.
Because it's easy with the first one, but it's very hard for the second one.
So remember, one model doesn't fit everyone.
Yes.
So alhamdulillah, you're aware. I think that's great. Mashallah, you recognize, what, my second child, I got to approach it differently. He needs a different kind of invitation. So your first child, he lists out everything. You're like, how's your day? And he loves that question. He goes on. Maybe your second child needs a different invitation, and it could look like, what was something that made you really happy today? Right? Hey, did you learn about? So I know my one nephew loves animals. So again, if I ask how are you, I know it's hard for him to understand that. But when I say like, hey, what new animal did you learn about today? And then the kid's like talking for an hour. So I would say figure out, what's the different question I need to be asking that is inshallah more specific and makes him feel, and then also meet people where they're at when it comes to their questions, right? So maybe again, a 7-year-old, how's your day? He doesn't know how to, respond but good. But where I get help and get answers, hey, how was the lunch? I left you a little special treat. How did you like it? Or what did your friend have? Did you guys share it? Just maybe you got to dig a little deeper, but just approaching it differently. But I think you're being curious, and that's number one with building trust. Something doesn't work. Hey, I'm gonna try something different. Inshallah. And asking better questions, alhamdulillah, establishes closeness. That's the beauty of it. And so don't overthink it. If it didn't work this time, again, ask something different. It builds closeness in any relationship, inshallah. And I'll talk about other contexts as well. So why are questions so important in building trust and safety? Because it communicates, I want to get to know you. I want to know you. I'm open to you. I don't want to pretend I know whatever's going on with you. This is everything that a question conveys. It shows that I care for you, right? Tell me about you. This is all the underpinnings of what a question does. And so especially when it comes to spouses, sometimes people don't know how to have conversations and questions, and then or we assume we know the answer, even with friends or siblings. It's like we're asking a question, but we're already thinking of what our response will be versus just opening and being, listening and showing, again, trust. Trust is built in the small moments. Trust isn't built when you have one big conversation. It's going to be built in, hey, I can tell you're off. Like, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? giving that invitation, right? It's in the small moment, just like sometimes if you can tell something's off and the person doesn't want to share, be like, hey, I can tell you're going through something. I'm here whenever you want to talk. Right? That's trust building, and whenever that person's ready, they can receive it. So whatever situation, especially with work as well, it's actually the worst thing to start with asking a person about just like, oh, what do you do? Like I think that's like a mask that we all hide behind in terms of our careers. It's actually important to ask people about their family. Like, hey, you know, how many kids do you have? Again, like, and actually that's my next. So let me go down. How do you use small talk? There's a place for small talk. We just don't want to get stuck there all the time. So the place for small talk is by asking people about their, you know, where are you from? Did you grow up in Toronto? Hey, how many kids do you have, right? All right, oh, I can tell, you know, like they got pictures on their desk, whatever it may be. Then that allows you now to move into the deeper trust and building. So again, for, you know, work teams, this is a really great place to start. Oftentimes people keep it just professional, or again, that whole getting too much into information. So a fine balance between the two. But again, by building safety and showing I do care, right? Hey, tell me about, you know, your kids. Oh, that's great. They're 5, asking follow-up questions. So where people sometimes get stuck is they'll ask the question, but they don't know what the follow-up is. So for example, when I've worked with couples, you know, so I'll have these conversations, like ask the question. So it's like, hey, you know, who is your best friend in grade 3? And so the husband might ask, and then it's like, okay, and then just move on. No, the goal then is, oh, like, so are you guys still friends? You know, did they move away? Like, what happened? So similarly in other conversations, when you're talking to someone, you can't just be like, you know, again, how are you? And then that's it. Oh, you know, it's been a tough week. Oh, what's going on? Like, are, you know, work deadlines, or do you have exams coming up? Right? And then you show care. Again, trust is being built. Versus like, oh yeah, man, like it's so busy and then I make it about me. Trust is broken the more you talk about yourself. It doesn't mean you can't share it, but be mindful where you're just, it's like a one-sided conversation. Many people get stuck in that as well. So small talk has a place. And then the final piece I want to cover is tone and body in building trust. This is one of, I would say, the easiest ones, but you know, there's a meta and there's a linear level of building trust. So you can say the right words, but if it's in the wrong tone and your body language is not conveying what you're saying, there's no trust being built. You could ask the most beautiful questions and it won't matter. Example, right? If I come up to you right now and I'm like, oh, tell me about yourself. I know I'm exaggerating a bit, but we do that, don't we? They did a study that when you're speaking to someone, just by holding the phone in my hand, if I had it, it gives her the message already that I'm disengaged. Because it shows that if something goes on here, that I'm going to that. So your body language, your tone, how you say things, absolutely matters. That's why I'd really encourage you, that relationship you've been holding in your head, don't do it over message. So you can't take tone. Trust can't be built over message because they can read it very differently. What do you want for dinner? What do you want for dinner? Right? Like very, very different. So tone and body language. Right? If you, again, eye contact, we already did that, so you guys got a gauge for it, inshallah, but also showing your body language is like leaning in. Crossing your hands, not so bad either, right? But really asking yourself, then we have like 5 minutes for engagement. I want you guys to ask yourself, what is something that someone does that makes you feel, just from their physical or their tone, that makes you feel like you can trust them? What's someone that's maybe a recent incident where they've done something, said something, or a tone they use that, you know what, made you feel like you really trust that person. And whoever's comfortable sharing, yeah.
Eye contact.
Yeah, eye contact. Like, it seems so basic, but you guys, and I'm sure we can all witness to it. People don't know how to make eye contact, right? I go into the grocery store, and because I moved from Montreal, where there weren't as many Muslims, I get so excited every time I'm like in a grocery store. Muslims everywhere. I'm like, no one's making eye contact. Like literally, as if they're seeing through me. SubhanAllah. Yes.
I just have a question about eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first converted, I had gone into this idea of eye contact, and you're looking at the brother, and they're looking over your shoulder, and you're like, what's going on? It makes you feel very uncertain. And then from then, that's their way of showing respect, like Islamically or whatever.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of...
I love that. So obviously, you know, we're religiously and culturally, the context matters too. So a brother is told to lower his gaze. However, making just a respectful eye contact and looking away, I don't think that's like really taking away from what Islamically is permitted. Obviously, again, not gawking. That's not what we're talking about. But with similar gender, yes, make eye contact. But if I'm in a grocery store, there's a brother, and I happen to look up either, I can say Assalamu alaikum. Like I can make that respectful eye contact and then continue on my way. So I think there's a balance between. I remember when I was in high school, subhanAllah, the Muslim brothers, and I grew up with mostly white people in London, Ontario, and it used to kill me because they talk to all these non-Muslim girls, and then I'm a Muslim woman, and they never acknowledged me, right? And I think similarly, then did this at a talk alongside a sheikh in Ottawa to the community there. Our Muslim brothers talk to non-Muslim coworkers all day. You're telling me you don't know how to talk and communicate with me in a respectful way? I think we have to kind of overcome that. So yes, there are the parameters Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, and we respect them and we strive to uphold them. That doesn't mean I can't respectfully acknowledge and say salam. And again, make respectful contact. So thank you for addressing that.
Can I share another perspective?
Yeah.
I was out with a friend having breakfast, and she kept looking at her phone, looking away, looking around. I'm like, oh, clearly she's not interested in what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But she said, you know what? I'm sorry if I'm looking around and I'm looking at my phone. I have ADHD.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that they're not paying attention to you. It's that they have a condition of
So she clearly communicated that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely an exception. And the fact that she's telling you, I think, is great. What I would say is, hey, how can I help you in maybe having focus, or just I feel like I can trust you more, or feel more safer when
Oh,
I'm
I felt immediately at ease. I'm like, okay, I'm not being ignored.
No, but I would still.
But it's just that.
I would still have some accountability with my friend.
Right.
That's just how I am. I'd be like, oh, I get that. So maybe not having your phone though, because I know the area of ADHD.
Right.
So I'm not having it on the table might actually help too. So just again, if you feel safe with her, that's what I would say. And then like I said, tone, and this is for self-awareness, right? Because I too often I get people, and again coaches, managers, executives, and who I work with, and they're like, I don't know what the issue is. And it's and then if I bring in the colleague, it's well, he's speaking to me in such a demeaning tone. Or, my mom's asking for help, but she's yelling at me. And so, of course, I don't want to do certain things, right? So, holding ourselves to account. So, I want you to, from a scale of 1 to 10, with your tone, that person that you've been thinking of, do you feel like you give them safety with just your tone? Do you think you make them feel that they can trust you with the tone that you use? 1 to 10 being, yes, absolutely, Razia, I've got that down. 1, yeah, there is good safety in that tone. Reflect on it, put that number down for yourself. Because you want to give that message with your tone, with your body, that I'm here, and I want to invite you into this relationship. That I want to have this conversation with you. So now I want you to think of what is one thing, and I know I already asked you for that little micro risk that you can take. To close off, I want you to ask what's one thing that you can do, inshallah, just to add to your habit and to who you are, that can help build safety in just every encounter that you have. What's one new habit that you can add to yourself? That you're like, you know what? I want to be a more trustworthy and safe person for others. What's one thing you could do? And then I would love for you guys to share. Yes.
Work on my tone.
Okay, love it.
Especially with my kids, right?
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you to.
I was thinking I'm a very sarcastic person. The sarcastic humor is my go-to, dark humor sometimes. So when I'm talking to maybe my friend or something, I might be a little too sarcastic sometimes during serious moments.
Yeah.
And that might be not their thing specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe tone down the sarcasm a little bit.
And it's definitely, sarcasm, and a lot of us are certain traits, people laugh. Sometimes it's our cover for how we're dealing with something. So, but I love that you're wearing it. It's beautiful, mashallah. And they're holding hands. Touch definitely builds trust. So if you're, sorry, I had to because it's a beautiful moment. So if there's again someone who's your family member, someone that is halal for you to touch that you've been thinking of, just holding their hand, even when you're having uncomfortable conversations, can build trust. So sometimes when I gotta sit my husband down, because we gotta have some a real conversation, I'll hold his hand, I love you, but we gotta talk about something, right? So alhamdulillah, just a physical touch can help our hearts feel regulated, feel trust and safety. Yes.
To quiet my mind chatter because as moms we have so much to do and that's going on in the back of my head. So I don't think I'm giving my kid as much attention as they would require to feel trust.
I love that. And again, kind of like you said with your friend, right? Like your kids can probably feel like mom's feeling all over the place and talking, and I don't feel like she's here with you.
I look like I'm
Yeah. No. But like I say that it's beautiful you're there, and that might be showing up. Who else? What's one small thing that you can start doing? Eye contact. I love that. Who else? You guys are such a fun group. I really appreciate your vulnerability. It definitely made me feel safe, and I know you guys made each other feel safe, because I can feel that in this room. Do you have one habit you want to do?
I hit the second. Change my tone.
Change your tone.
And pose.
Yeah. Okay, so here's like a bonus thing I'll give you. The more that we slow down, to kind of watch how much easier it is to build trust and safety. So much of the pain that people are feeling is because we're in this go, go, go mode. When you're in go, 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 you don't know what you're saying, you just need to get it out. You just need to get it out. And I'll tell you personally, this past month something happened that an organization that I was dealing with, and first lesson I learned, I'm like, I need to slow down. Yes, my inbox is filled with emails and I have so many things that I have to do and people I'm dealing with. Regardless, I would not want to stand on the day of judgment and have one encounter where I broke someone's heart because I rushed an email and maybe said something in a tone that was perceived something different. Again, the way someone internalizes is not on me, but I want to be responsible for myself. As moms, I'm not a mom, but whoever hears, and even everyone, this is for everyone, slow down. Slow down. The promise of technology was that we would have more time. Does anyone feel like they had more time? No. We just feel like now we have to keep up with the pace. I promise you, if I see you in a year and you've just slowed down a little bit, you will come and tell me there's a change in your life. Things will happen when they do. Just slow down. No one cares if you're 10 minutes late at the door. Whoever does, they can understand. If not, they got to work on their trust issues, right? Like, just slow down and watch how much easier it is to build that trust and safety with one another. Inshallah. Again, don't abuse it. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of the pain comes up because we're so just reactive. And again, trust is broken because you're just reactively responding and saying things. Yes?
Like jumping to conclusions.
Sorry?
Like jumping to conclusions.
Yes, I love it. So he's going to work on building more trust by not jumping to conclusions. That's such a big one. Such a big one to come. Yeah.
Slow down in the way that when someone is telling you something, like I should let them feel it a little bit more, because I tend to, like, I always want to like solve people's problems.
Yeah.
So I just want to help them, but sometimes I like go too fast.
Yeah.
So I kind of like sit there in that mindset and just let them feel really good.
I love that. That's good, mashallah. So again, slowing down, giving someone space. So you're building safety by your silence. Silence can be safety. Who could have thought, right? That can be trust. SubhanAllah. That's beautiful.
Good tone. It's good to not talk at that time when you have like peak like aggression, and so it's better, right?
Like I said, I could just sit here and dissect the seed up for you. Stay quiet, there's nothing good to say. The Prophet wisdom. You can't, even as a mom, if your child's like, obviously as long as they're not harmed, just silence. Right? If you're not regulated, do not respond. Don't say anything. Inshallah, once you're regulated, then come from that place. And again, the trust and safety will be built. 2 minutes? Okay.
And if they never say anything, then does that mean that they just don't trust you?
If your child never opens up to you, is that what you're asking? Yeah, so again, I think I would come back to the invitation. Maybe I need to rechange the invitation. And, you know, and sometimes it does. You got to come at it from different angles and ask, like, have I been using different avenues, right? And then asking them, like, how could I build safety with you? What would make you feel like you can trust me? Like, give them the agency and ownership of that. So many times, and I know especially in the parent-teen relationship, like that's the case. Like where, you know, parents are like, hey, this is what I'm doing. But like, have you ever just asked how they want to receive trust? How they would like to, you know, feel safe? And again, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he built trust and safety. Why was the initial followers and even the non-Muslims, right? Why did they still respect his authority? Because of the trust he had built, right? The security, the relationship, the investment he made with people. That's what trust is. You do have to invest. If you, and that's why I hope today that when you came into this and you're like, okay, she's gonna tell me how, I can make people trust me more, or how, I can, again, it was always about the other person. I hope from here it's like, I have to be that trusting person. If I'm someone that people can trust and be safe with, trust me, Allah subhanahu will send you also people. And maybe he'll test you with others, but you'll be able to easily filter them out. So making others yourselves, inshallah. And so it's a process, right? Be kind to yourself through that. Jazakallah. Yes, go ahead.
Asking why question, I noticed made my tone, even if I'm not so calm.
Yeah.
If I ask why question to my kids, they feel like they're attacked.
So there might be more triggers there.
Yeah. So instead of asking why question, I go to like how or what made you.
Yeah. Great.
That calms them down a little bit.
So why do you, so sort of why, like, how did you approach that? Or what made you feel that you could go and set the fire alarm on? What was going on there? Yeah. My brother, so my niece is much a very strong personality and she loves doing things her way, so I've been telling him because he gets triggered. Like, so I've been helping him because I'm like, why are you getting upset when she's not listening to you? Like, is it really that she's not listening to you and that's what made you upset? Because why do you ask, like, hey, Haya, like I told you this, why, but why did you think that this was a better alternative? I'm like, you're making it about you, that she's not, respecting your authority or whatever that is. Like, why do you engage in figuring that out? So that's, so much of our pain in relationships is because the inner work here hasn't been done. So I hope you guys are excited about that process and journey for yourself. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you people who are safe and allows you to hold others in safety as well. Jazakallah for being with me. So we are done. Best of luck for the rest of the day. If you'd like to stay connected, you can follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. I share a lot of my work. I share a lot of productive posts and things that I do. I have some upcoming events in town if you'd like to attend. I'm doing a thing in Hamilton. I don't know if anyone's there with Lisa Holmes and inshallah Islam in the week. But yeah, look forward to seeing you at these events inshallah. What day do you guys want? Because I'm going to Montreal for theirs. But I'm like, oh, Day. So wait, I'll bring it up to the one. Yeah, so it's not let's do